What's the closest anyone's ever got to killing you? Is that a weird question?
That is a bit of a weird question. I'm not sure how to answer it. I mean, if somebody was competent, I wouldn't know they were close to killing me until I was dead, right?
Have you had a sip of the coffee yet?
Exactly. So you have to consider these things. And you have to be paranoid, and you have to always think in advance, right? If I were to walk into a room and somebody were to give me $1 million briefcase, I would instantly be worried for my life. Perhaps if you walked in a room and they give you $1 million briefcase, you'd say, yay, and you'd tweet about it and just walk out to your car like a dummy. That's how you get killed. I'd take the briefcase and I'd look around and see who else is in the room, and then I'd consider, can I get to my car alive? That's the life I've lived, right? We're all a product of the life we've lived. Mm-hmm. So perhaps people have come close. I have had incidents. Yeah. I do carry scars. My finger came off from a knife here, you can see.
How did that happen?
They sewed back on.
They sewed your finger back on?
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, I see it. How did that happen?
It's a long story, but I got into an argument with a guy, and I have to be careful what I say, and I've never told this story online before, and I'm not going to give any much more detail. But he didn't threaten me. He just stopped replying, and then it was about a week later when I was walking through a car park.
Really?
Yeah. That's how the real world works. All this big talk tough and tweets and internet tough guy, all this shit is not real. No, because intent in and of itself can be hindered by your own mouth, right? If you have genuine intention, the last thing you're gonna do is destroy the element of surprise. If my intention was to genuinely hurt you, I would never sit here and say I'm gonna hurt you. I'd come to a podcast.
You don't have to get into details. I won't press details, but you got an argument with this guy. Who started the argument? You started it? That's a detail. You don't have to answer that.
It was a disagreement.
A disagreement?
Yeah.
Whose fault was it?
I don't think the world really works in faults. I don't think it works in black and white. It's often varying shades of gray.
Okay.
There's no good team in this American infantile idea of good and bad. The fact you live in LA, there's a good guy, there's a bad guy, there's a superhero, there's an evil person who's just trying to conquer the world for no reason and enslave everybody for his ego, and there's a good guy who wants to risk his life to defend. That's not how the world works. Every single war, every single conflict, there's two sides and there's two opposing viewpoints, and some of them are part right and part wrong, which makes the world such an evil place. If it was truthfully good and evil, it'd be far easier to discern which team to be on. But often it's varying shades of gray. Someone is right about a certain element and someone's right about another certain element, and this is why there's such a large disagreement, whether it's a relationship or whether it's a war or whether it's a debt or money or an argument with some guy. This is how it works. It's very often you don't have rights and wrongs.
Okay.
But then you go deeper down the thing. Then what's right and what's wrong?
Okay, what is right and what's wrong?
Right and wrong is capability, because the victor is always right. The winner is always right.
Is that true?
Well, of course it is, because all of our narratives we hold are based on the winner writing the history books. Right? We decided who the good guy was because the good guy won the war. A bad guy's never won a war. Well, that's because they're both bad and they're both good, and whoever wins just paints the pictures like they were the good guy and the other person was the bad guy because their narrative reigns supreme. So really good guys always win war. So then you say, well, who's right and who's wrong? If he would have killed me, he would have been right. But he didn't. But this is the reality of the world. The reality of the world is the capability for violence, and this is what makes you right. The reason the American empire gets to be right globally around the world, the reason they get to decide what happens on certain issues, the reason they get to choose political leaders for other countries and start wars and end them in a whim, is because they can destroy everything. Because they have the capability for violence, that makes them right. Nothing else matters.
But if he killed you, but then went to prison, got the death sentence, wouldn't you kind of be painted as right?
Well, he wouldn't get the death sentence.
Right and weak?
He wouldn't get the death sentence in the UK. And I don't think I would be painted as right. Perhaps the world we live in. We often say we see the world as we see ourselves, right? So what you just said is very telling. You're saying that if I was murdered, I would be seen as right. Because what you're thinking is that if someone murdered me, people would have sympathy for me and I'd be seen as correct and right, potentially. Whereas I see things the other way.
Okay.
I see the world the way I see myself. And if I got murdered, I'd be seen as wrong. He would tell everybody there was a disagreement over X amount of money. He had to go and now he's gone. And everyone would agree with him. Well, he should have paid you then, or whatever. So it's your view is based on your position and yourself and your mind. In my world experience, I think that if you lose, nobody really has sympathy for you and nobody thinks you're right. I think if you lose, you just lost. And the person who wins gets to paint the narrative ultimately and completely. That's how I think the world works. He would have been absolutely right if I bled to death. Then he would be right.
Just to finish it, I'll stop asking about it. You have a disagreement. The guy stopped texting you back. You think you're all fine and dandy.
I didn't think it was fine. I never thought it was fine.
But
he didn't threaten me.
But he didn't threaten you, so you kind of just like felt weird, like, had like a weird vibe, like. So
I
just like.
I understand the world.
Okay.
But I have to live my life.
And so you're like in a parking garage kind of thing. alone. It's nighttime, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You're alone, you're walking to your car, and what happens? Some like big dude just like approaches you with a knife or like catches you off guard. He's in your, you open your car, he's in the passenger seat. Like, what was the vibe?
Well, this incident was never formally reported, and I need to be careful how I answer these questions. But I carry the scar, and I think you can work it out.
No, it's okay. It's hard to miss the scar.
Yeah, you can do the rest of the math yourself. But I didn't die.
Okay.
So he wasn't correct. If I had died, I would have been wrong.